Hi, this is Kevin McKay. I'm a DJ producer and label boss of Glasgow Underground. You are listening to the Liverpool Connection podcast, Music and Football episodes.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Liverpool Connection podcast. This is my music, football, and more episode where I bring on a DJ, producer, musician to talk about the two loves in life, which are music and football. My next guest is a DJ, producer, and also label boss of Glasgow Underground. It is Kevin McKay. Welcome to the pod, mate.
Yes, lovely to be here.
Um, you know, I don't know if a lot of people know that you are a football supporter and you support Rangers, Glasgow
Yeah,
Rangers. And I was just looking up, which is quite bizarre, because I know Liverpool have played Celtic quite a
yeah.
lot. We've actually only played Rangers twice, like in a competitive
Uh,
match.
both Champions League matches.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
I, yeah, so was there one before that? I can't remember the time before that. So when um my like when I was growing up, when I was a teenager, I wasn't supporting Rangers. My dad was a minister, a Protestant minister, and we actually the reason I ended up with them is I went to the school right next to Ibrox Stadium. So it used to be called Bellahouston Primary. He used to be the minister at Bellahouston St Stephen Church and Protestant minister. So the Rangers would give him two season tickets. He put them straight in the bin because they wouldn't sign a Catholic, and he was really anti-Rangers. And so it was only when I was old enough to be. He took me to one match. I think he took me to a St Mirren match because when we moved to Paisley, and then I don't know. They tried to get me into Aberdeen. They got me an Aberdeen top when Ferguson won the when they won when the Ferguson team won the Cup Winners' Cup in Gothenburg, and I never really sort of got into that. And then it was only when I was in my 20s and I was in charge of my own money and could do that. So I really only started supporting Rangers in the kind of early to mid 90s. So yeah, I'm not. And again, it was all on my own money, and so I didn't have. It wasn't something that I did. Hugely, I got a season ticket maybe when I was in my 30s. So by the time you got to like late 90s, yeah, I think I had a season ticket by the late 90s. So yeah, I'm trying to place when the Liverpool match was.
Yeah, I obviously, the two Champions League matches, and I think the other one was just a friendly because
Right,
both Liverpool and Rangers were not in Europe at the time, and
right, okay.
I actually think yous lot beat us 1-0, if I'm not
Right,
mistaken.
okay. So is that
Yeah,
just post high school? So is that like mid 80s or like that was it something around about then?
I would think so. Just because I'm
Right,
just I think back like when is kind of the last time we've been out of Europe because Liverpool and both Rangers usually are in Europe.
yeah.
Maybe not both the Champions League, but Europa League or something like that. But yeah, it must be like the 80s, 90s that it was a
I
friend.
mean, I remember that era when all the English players came up to play in Scotland because of what was happening with English football in Europe. So, I mean, that was fabulous for Scottish football. But yeah,
How
I
how
only remember the two Champions League games, which were not pretty to watch as a Rangers fan.
yeah, I'm sure. I mean, the last one was what, the 7-1 drubbing.
Yeah,
I mean, you scored first as well. I mean, I was a little shocked. I mean, I think it made for a good first, first
I
half because
think,
first half was 1-1, right?
yeah, I was watching it in a pub and I just didn't have that much confidence in it. I just felt I think our first match that season was against Ajax and they'd taken us apart, and I just felt that it was a step up for Rangers that they just couldn't, they just weren't going to be able to deal with. The Europa League was the teams at that level were much more teams that you could take on, right? And the level of skill and fitness that you don't have. You see the Premier, they see even teams that we have beaten, Dortmund or whoever, come up against Premiership teams, and they don't. have it. And you see players that look amazing in the Europa League. I remember seeing Christopher Nkunku when he played at Ibrox, and I was like, oh wow, he scored a goal out of nowhere. It was like amazing, and you just think he could just turn it on, and then he ends up at Chelsea and nothing. It's sort of like the level difference at the Premier League is just something else. You don't get chances that you get elsewhere. You have to be able to take them. You know, strikers like our striker Cyril Dessers last season, he would miss too many chances. You wouldn't, you know, the only goals we scored against Premiership opposition were goals that were like amazing. Like had a chance, it was a half chance, and he put it in the back of the net. Like Egeman scored against United. I think it was Egeman. Yeah, I think Egeman scored against United when we played them last in the Europa League last season. And it was just one of those ones that you'd see him do that 10 times, and he'll probably do it, get it in the back of the net two or three times. Whereas in the Premier League, they've got players like that for days. So.
Well, I think the good thing for like Liverpool is we've had so many amazing Scottish players, you know,
That's true.
Johnson, you know, Robbo, that have just come down and like really like taken the Premiership by well, not the Premiership. I mean, Robbo was, but obviously Dalglish and Hansen was First Division. But yeah, we've had a good joy, you know. Obviously, you know, the great Bill
We had
Shankly.
Scottish manager as well. So
Yeah, Bill Shankly. I mean, you know, one of the greatest out there. But what? How do you feel? Because you know, I look at it like the Scottish League, and I mean, it's rarely like the first and second place is rarely without Celtic and Rangers. What's your
yeah,
thoughts on it? Because you know, it's kind of a bit like because I'm over in America, so the MLS
yeah.
they obviously don't have like promotion or relegation, so it's the same teams every single season, and it's usually the same, you know, three, four teams that actually, you know, get to the championship. What's your thoughts on like just the Celtic Rangers and there's really nothing in between?
I mean, it's going to be to do with money. You know, they've got the biggest attendances, and also with the football that comes in, I think they take 50% of the TV revenue because, you know, and they'll argue, the commercial directors at those teams will argue, yeah, that's because they've got the biggest draw, so we want most of the TV money. Um, but then it the way the money is set up, it's really set up in very much in the way that the world is set up right now. The people at the very top are getting very, very rich, and the people if you're not at that top table, then you're fighting for scraps. You know, we went the season that we went to Europa League final and got beaten when we lost on penalties in Seville. We took in 18 million in TV revenue. Celtic, I don't think, had a great Champions League campaign. I can't remember if they won a game, but they were out at the group stage and they took 18 million. So the difference, you know, we beat two Bundesliga teams on the way there. We beat two Serie A teams, La Liga teams on the way there, and yet you have that long season, that incredible campaign, and that's the monetary reward. So it just feels that, you know, it's a shame. It's a problem in football. Like the only good thing is that at the end, when you come right down to it, it's 11 guys against 11 guys, and sometimes magic can happen. And when you're used to losing against all the big teams, and you have one of those games where the magic happens, it makes it all the sweeter. I can't imagine, you know, ever been a fan of a team that has won like or had a great run in the Champions League, apart from, you know, Rangers did a bit in the 90s, but. I can't imagine what it's like to be always winning. You must get a little bit used to it. Whereas with us in Europe, we're never used to it. So when we have that run, it's just, you know, going to, like, if you're Man United getting to the Europa League final, you're like, oh, it's kind of expected. Whereas when we do it, it's like, oh, this is just absolutely magic. I'm having the time of my life. So you kind of, yeah, you make up for it in those moments.
Well, I love watching like the, you know, the Rangers fans because they travel just like Liverpool fans.
Yeah.
The away support is absolutely massive. You know, and when you are in Europe, I always look for Rangers and Celtic just because of the support. I mean, you know, I am a Liverpool supporter, but I'm also a football supporter as well. You know,
Yeah.
love watching as many matches as possible. It gets me away from the kids, which is good. You need that. You need that like lad time to, with your mates down the pub. What I actually want to get your thoughts on, like, because I know a few years ago there was talk of Celtic and Rangers maybe coming to the English leagues.
Yeah, I
Um,
think it's been voted on a couple of times by the Premier League, and I don't think they've wanted to do it. I think the main reason from reading all the journalists who talk about it is that the FA, the national associations don't want to jeopardize the special relationship they have with FIFA, where even though we're one country, the United Kingdom, we get to field four teams at the World Cup if for or the European Championships if they qualify, but we have that opportunity to do so. And I think, I was always curious because you've got Wrexham, you've got Cardiff, you've got a couple of teams from Wales in the English system, but then the argument is they've always been in that system. And I think that seems to be the downfall of it, that they don't want to, they don't want to do that. And then I think the EFL or the Premier League, all the teams would have to vote for it. So if they voted in addition, some teams are going to have to be moved away to get them in, and then not all teams are going to vote for it. The one thing I thought Rangers should have done, or when they had all that problems with the finance, and they were sort of the what happened with Craig White, sorry, and the sort of company behind Rangers went bankrupt. I did feel that they should have considered having a chat to the lower English divisions and saying, you know what, because going back to Scottish Division Two, the fourth tier, it's like it was a long slog on the way back up, and if you're going to take that slog, like, why not take it in a place where the riches are much better? And then if I guess the draw up in Scotland, it's so tribal up there. It's sort of like Celtic Rangers is such a big thing culturally, and it's quite nice being a Rangers supporter living in London now because I don't. It's all the heat's gone, so I've got mates that are Celtic fans, and I can talk to them about it. And when you're up there and living up there, there's too much sort of ribbon and rawness and the sort of, so. Yeah, that's the one thing I thought Rangers should have done. I don't know if that was ever mooted or talked about. I never saw it in the press, and I'm sure if they had done, it would have been in the Scottish press because they love a gossip up there.
Everyone loves a gossip, it seems. I would think though, like if Celtic and Rangers kind of left the Scottish league, it just wouldn't be the same. I mean, you've got your Aberdeens and your St Mirrens and Dundees, but the two big clubs in Scotland we all know as Celtic and Rangers, and I just don't think it'd be like, I don't know. I mean,
Yeah, I think it's a money problem, really. I think, I don't. There's a lot about America that's broken, but the way they've got the NFL and stuff with the draft and the way that in it sort of really, it allows for different teams to come through. When I started following American football, it was the Miami Dolphins. There was a period where it was the Giants. It changes because of that system where the team at the bottom gets the first pick of the college players, and I think there's a salary cap. There's loads of good things about it that make the competition healthy, and you can support your local. Everyone's got a chance, and I would love it if they did that for football, but I just can't see it. The people at the top are making too much money, and certainly with the way World Cup's going to, the Middle East all the time, it's a bit depressing for somebody who grew up on like proper football. This situation's a bit depressing.
yeah, well, I mean, money's kind of ruined football for me. It's the greed, and quite a few years ago, I started falling out of love with it just
Yeah,
because of it's the higher ups. I mean, the Platinis of this world, and FIFA and UEFA just get the manila envelopes full of money in the back pocket, you know, and just because I'm a human being, and watching the World Cup get placed in places that have bad human rights. I just don't
Yeah.
understand that. We all know it's about money. And, we live in a changed world now. It's happening with music as well.
Yeah.
Big brands, big clubs, the smaller clubs are getting kind of shut down. Um, but I do want to go back to the footy before we start talking about.
Yeah, talking about too much about the money, right? Okay.
Yeah, that'll go down a rabbit hole, and
Yeah,
we'll
that's
both start getting pissed off. Um, Talk about Stevie G.
yeah,
For me, I think Rangers was the right place for him, and I
yeah.
think he left too soon because obviously at Villa it just didn't work for him. What's your like position on Gerrard? Because he obviously won the league for you.
Yeah. No, I mean, and I think it was a league that every Rangers fan wanted to win because Celtic were about to win 10 in a row. Like Rangers have won 9 in a row, Celtic have won 9 in a row. They've done it twice, but no team in Scotland has won 10 titles in a row. And so, I felt Celtic took their eye off the ball a little bit when I saw they'd appointed Neil Lennon. I thought, oh, wow, they think they've got this in the bag. And I think there was just a hunger and a desire there. I think Gerard, there was a lot that was maybe not. Again, Rangers at this, they're never going to have a perfect manager because the really really great managers are managing in different or in countries other than Scotland. But I think he really got coming from Liverpool with the sort of tribal nature of Liverpool and Everton, they really got that. And also Liverpool, Man United, the rivalry, the local rivalry, he really got it. And I think really understood that more so than maybe some of the foreign coaches we've had, where they just don't like, if you look losing to, you can't just lose to Celtic. You need to have at least level pegging. You need to be like win one, lose one, win one, lose one. You can't just be like getting, you can't have 5, 6 games against Celtic and lose them all or not win any of them. You're not going to survive more than a season and a half like that. So he got that, and yeah, I think the combination of him and Michael Beale obviously was really successful. I think it was. Yeah, I loved watching that team that season. It was great to watch. Haven't had a season like that for a long while. I've been watching 10, 12 seasons of just, them in lower leagues and not the way that I used to watching them. It's a bit like must be what it must be feel like to be a Man United fan now. Not that any Liverpool fans are feeling sorry for them.
Not one ounce, not one ounce.
No, no, I know. Like Sam, who's the A&R for Glasgow Underground, is a Liverpool fan, so I get it. I know exactly. I know exactly the feeling.
What's your real expectations then for this season?
I don't know. We had a friendly against Bruges on Saturday, and I watched that. That was you could get that subscription on the website. I wasn't able to go up to Glasgow, but looked all right. Looked like he played one of the younger academy guys he took his goal really well. I think his name's Curtis Lewis. Is that right? I can't remember his name, but I'd never seen him play before, and I don't know whether Russell Martin's possession-based football, the sort of people like tippy-tappy, Barcelona style triangles, I don't know if that's the key to unlocking Scottish, the way that Scottish teams come and set up against Rangers, and Celtic as well, which is basically defend en masse, hit them on the break, try and it's a war of attrition, and both Celtic fans and Rangers fans get on their backs of their team if they haven't scored a goal by half time. There's this kind of the natives are restless. There's that kind of feeling, and I don't know whether that's the right approach there. For me, it needs to. I think the way Celtic have done it, which is we are we are more talented and we can be faster and fitter because we've got players who are operating at a higher level. So just hit the ground at 100 miles an hour and try and blow them away. That is, to me, that's the way that works. So whether that aligns with what Russell Martin's going to do, I'm not entirely sure. So I'm kind of not hugely optimistic, but happy to be proven wrong.
So a trophy or two would do you.
Honestly, I don't mind whether we win or lose. I don't sort of I obviously it's a game of football, so you want to win. But at the end of we've been on a massive journey, and so even where we are now compared to where we were 5 years ago is very different. They were still trying to get the money sorted at the club. Whenever I look at our performance, I think getting to the final in Seville, we were totally punching. And that is when the team plays like that, and when the team's together. And there was a glimpses of it last season, when we beat Celtic 3-0 one game, and there was glimpses of this, like it's there, but obviously doesn't happen all the time, because if it did, all these players would be off somewhere else. So it's just, I think I'm fascinated by how it's sort of playing out, and I kind of that it's more interesting to me to talk about how it's playing out, and the sort of than whether we've won or lost is more like, or what's going to happen with this and what's going to happen with that. I find it really interesting. If I want to just watch a team that's going to win all the time, I'll just support Man City. So, or whatever, whichever version of that, like Real Madrid, like whatever, PSG last season, all of a sudden I'm a PSG fan. So it's just that they're and looking at Rangers, you're like, oh, I mean, you're light years off of that team. So no matter what, Celtic can be like, we beat you, or Celtic fans can be like, ha ha ha, we're better than you. But you're still light years away from PSG. So like, what and
I
like
mean, I think we all watch football for the good, the bad, and the ugly times.
yeah,
Like some people always ask me, like, if Liverpool weren't successful, would you still support him? And 100%, I would still support him if they dropped down
yeah.
to the third division, because that's just who I am. You know,
Well, you're old enough to know, have lived through them not being successful. Have lived through a decade plus of Man United dominance and still supporting them. So it's a silly question to ask, just because you know, because they are more successful now. Certainly, winning the Premier League last season.
yeah. Thanks, Graham Souness.
What did
Uh,
he say? I missed that. What was Souness's thing?
oh
Oh,
no,
when he came,
when he
when he
managed
was
us.
in, when he was, yeah,
Yeah, that's when we weren't very good. He just didn't get it right. He sold a few players that he shouldn't have done, and brought in players that weren't as good as the ones he sold. So, but you get the highs and lows of football, and I would say it's kind of the same with music as well. You get booked all the time, and then all of a sudden there's nothing. Nothing's coming through
yeah,
your box. I do want to talk about the music, like your early roots and influences.
yeah.
Did your family or your mum and dad have any influence on the music, like you started to listen to? Oh, you're shaking your head already.
No, 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 no. My dad was a minister all his life, and my mum was a teacher first, and then she became a minister as well. And so my dad's view is that there's no music created after 1945 is any good. He's a classical music fan, so he would rarely listen to music, and if it was classical. My mum is one of the few people I've ever met who says she actively dislikes music and she doesn't want music on ever. And so, no, music for me was something I didn't have a very happy childhood. So, music for me was an escape. I would save up my pocket money and go to the record shop and buy Talking Heads 12 inches or Adamant singles, or the stuff that I was buying in Scotland World Cup football song in 1978. Those things were I got my obsession with it just got stronger as I got older, as I turned into a teenager and got into Prince and Fleetwood Mac, and joined the Britannia Music Club and did whatever I could. I moved to Largs at that point, which is like a small town on the west coast. So I was like, back then you could get music from the library. So I joined the library, take out all the LPs I could, just really try and explore as much music as I could. Discovered Jean-Michel Jarre, discovered electronic music in the kind of mid 80s. So yeah, just got really into it, and it only that just took a different level when I went to uni, because I went up to Glasgow and I was living around the corner from the sub club. And the guy living next door to me in the dorm next door to me was from London, and he knew that this was like a really cool club and good DJs played there. So he was like, "Let's go." So we went out, and first time I tried to go on a Saturday night, I got knocked back because I didn't look the part. So found out that it was easier to get in on the midweek nights because they weren't such hot tickets. So I went on a Thursday and just fell in love with house music, and that was my journey, not anything to do with my parents. And even then, I remember when I think I'd set the label. Put out my first record in '94, and then maybe by the end of the '90s, I'd started to. I think I'd released an album in '98, a compilation of all the stuff that we'd put out. Me and Andy Carrick. I remember giving it to my mum, and she's like, "Okay." And then like 2 years later, she's like, "I've still got these things you gave me. I've never listened to them. Do you want them back?" And I was like, "Yeah, okay, mum, give us them back."
Wow. Yeah, my dad's a rocker, so he's a brummie. So
Right,
went to school with Ozzy, so
right, okay,
he loves his Black Sabbath, Deep Purple, and my mum's more the soulful Elvis and the Beatles and stuff like that. So I got the best of both worlds, a bit of a rocker and a rock and roller and soul boys.
nice.
Yeah, it's and then obviously like I've got a sister as well, and I stole all her 45s, Depeche Mode, Frank Goes to Hollywood. So that was my gateway into kind of like dance music as well. So and I by the way, I got to mention your re-edits. I'm absolutely loving them, just because I mean they're a little tongue in cheek, but they're done very well, and I mean that's kind of what you want. Like there's a lot of DJs out there that want to take you on this so-called journey, but
Yeah,
I did like what I read a little something that you said that dance floors is for dancing. You're there to make people happy,
yeah,
and the re-edits that you're doing every time I hear them, I just got a big smile on my face, because it does
yeah. I
bring
mean,
to
yeah. I just wonder. Some of them are just like it's sometimes it's just not that deep. It's just a bit of fun, and people can get really serious about it, and they're like, "Oh, this is cheesy, this and cheesy that," but they're guaranteed at the right moment, at the right thing. And so maybe like if I've done a really cheesy record, like I did an edit of Tiffany, I think we're alone now. And sure, you're not going to play that at every party, and probably not going to play that unless it has a TikTok moment. You're probably not going to play that to a room full of 20-year-olds. But at a 40th birthday party, and everyone's been like, had a few drinks, and people, then you play that, and everyone's just like singing along. People have got, and and that can be just as life affirming as playing like Knights of the Jaguar last record after you've DJ'd with Derek May or whatever kind of trendy, cool scenario you want to sort of dream up. Those moments when people are just absolutely losing it, you know what I mean? Is just are amazing, and that's what makes DJing incredible. And I think about moments like that. One of them is like at a mate's wedding, and it was you have a series of things, and then I think I played Destiny's Child, the single ladies, and it just like one of those moments where like, and then the whole dance floor and all the women have got their hands up there, and people are just going absolutely bonkers. And I've been playing dance music and mixing it in and out. It wasn't just like pop hits all night, and just because you've been playing some kind of stuff that wasn't that well known, and then you play something that absolutely everyone knows, and it's really appropriate for a wedding, and everyone's just going nuts. I think those moments are what makes like parties and DJing really special. So I don't just want to do like cool moment part like work, or like the stuff I've done where it's like, right, this is for, I've seen Peggy Goo play that and people going mad, that's great. But also if you're doing your mate's wedding, I've got you, that kind of thing.
Oh, when did you first start DJing?
Pretty much after, I mean, I used to make tapes. So I had I was always the kind of person who was most into music. So I would have, like I said, I would borrow like albums from the library and I'd have all this collection. So I would make mixtapes. Like we would be 16, 17 and just got, well, 17, just got our driver's licenses, off doing things we shouldn't be and getting up to stuff we shouldn't be. And I wanted my tape in this in the deck, like, and it'd be like, oh, I'm gonna do one that's like, okay, I'm gonna do like 60s, I'm gonna do 70s, so I'll do like the Doors, and then I'll do one that's just got Temptations and all that stuff in it, and just have theme tapes. And then, even I was into like early like Italo house, like stuff that got into the charts because I was I was in a small town, so things like Gino Latino, Italo house that got into the charts in 87 or 88 and making up slightly more dancey things. But I didn't, and bought a second, I bought a mixer from a Radio Shack mixer from Tandy, and I was kind of mixing between my CD player and my and the turntable in my hi-fi system that I'd bought. So I didn't really have a clue about how to do it, like how people did it with techniques and stuff. And then when I got to uni, that's when I found out. I was like, oh, you get two techniques in a mixer, and then that's how you mix two things together. That's how DJs do it. So I kind of learned about that when I was at uni for the first time. So 89, I was 19. So yeah, I got into it from that. My friend Chris, who was in the dorm next door to me, he's the one that showed me all of that. He had mates that were DJs, so he was like, "These are the decks you buy. Don't buy any others. You need techniques. Techniques is the thing." So I was like, "Okay, okay." So like, bought a couple of techniques, and I'd been working in bars and stuff in Glasgow for that first year of uni, and then in the summer, me and him shared the flat, and we just every day after work, had a summer job every day after work. Be like, right, going to crack this mixing thing, and it over a whole summer, I managed to teach myself how to mix. So I think from the beginning of my second year at uni, when I was 20, 1990, Glasgow was City of Culture. Managed to get a gig at the Students' Union, so I was kind of properly, officially DJing, actually, like in a room where people paid to get in or whatever, like that kind of thing. So
Yeah, I think I've spoken to a lot of DJs, and it usually starts at student unions for
yeah,
some, you know, and but they're a great crowd because you've got the indie kids, you've got the acid house kids, you've got some in between, and if you can get that crowd dancing, then you're well up for it.
yeah, there wasn't really much dance stuff. Like house was still like house music was really still quite a kind of you know, was a real subset of youth culture. It wasn't like the main part of it. So I don't know how because how old are you? Were you
I'm 54.
okay? So we're the same age, right? Okay, so yeah, I mean you'll remember then. So 1989, the stuff that there was very few dance records that in the charts. Pop music was very different from house music and dance music, and maybe in 1990 it got a little bit more, but then it was like Too Unlimited and stuff, which is very different to the house music that I was hearing at the sub club, which is more like Frankie Knuckles, New Groove, Strictly Rhythm, Italian house, maybe some the most kind of ravey stuff you'd hear would be DJ Professor, and it would it would be more cooler house music rather than Too Unlimited, or there would be some records you would hear both places like Snap, The Power, or you'd hear some records Carl Cox, I Want You Forever, things like that you would hear in a cool club that would also get into the charts. Um, but yeah, I remember trying to play like Left Field Not Forgotten when I bought it to the student union and just like, nah. There was yeah. The Charlatans, yes, like like Stone Roses, like that kind of stuff that you like student dance, indie dance, that would work fine, but good luck with your kind of, The Beloved or anything that I was into at that time that was more kind of house orientated.
Yeah, I think that's why like Big Beat connected with the
Yeah,
students, because it was, lo-fi fidelity
energy.
and Fat Boy, obviously Norman Cook. Yeah, it was just you go out on the lash and listen to, a bunch of like indie dance music. It was just the right place at the right time. So let me ask you, Kevin, like obviously the DJ and stuff,
Mm.
started for you. When was the point where you're like, you want to start a label?
So when I was DJing in Strathclyde Uni, I went to Strathclyde Uni Students' Union in John Street, and I was playing. We had a Friday night there. It's called Sanctuary, and I was doing there every Friday night. We had the kind of lower level. The upstairs was all your kind of Goodbye Mr. Mackenzie, REM, proper indie dance, like nonsense, and they were giving us a shot playing a kind of more cooler, Balearic-y, housey sort of vibe. And there's a guy in my course and he came up to me and he's like, "Oh, I make music like this, but it doesn't sound like this. But I'd like it to sound like this. Do you think you could help me make it sound more like this?" And this is Andy Carrick, who we ended up making a bunch of records together. So I went over to he was at uni in Strathclyde, which is in the centre of Glasgow, but he lived in Eaglesham, which is kind of like it's a suburb of Glasgow on the outskirts on the south. So I just used to go out to his house and we would I would be like, right, how's this made? And he had a sampler and a keyboard, and we would just try and make stuff that sounded like what I was playing. So just and then send it to local record labels. There was a label called Hubba Hubba that was based out of Falkirk and Limbo and Soma. All these people, I knew most of these people from buying records in the local record shop, 23rd Precinct. So I knew Stuart Nord from Slam, and I knew Billy who'd ran 23rd Precinct. So I would send them demos and then they would give us feedback. And I think the reality was what I was really into, the labels weren't really into. So the labels were looking for that kind of more progressive house sound that was really popular in the beginning of the 90s. And I didn't play that as a DJ. So I had no clue how to make that because I just didn't play those records. And so I was kind of really into more like deeper houseier stuff, New York style, and some of the stuff that was coming out of Europe. So we just had this 2 years where we went back and forth with labels, and they would be like, "Nah, it's not good enough," and we'd be like banging our heads off the brick wall trying to listen to A&R comments. And then one day we were just like, you know what? I'm done with all of this. So why don't we just like we were coming to the end of our degree course as well. So I was like, why don't we just do whatever we want, right? Let's just do whatever we want to see what happens. So one summer we wrote 4 tracks that became our first EP on Muzique Tropique, and I was really happy with them. So I didn't finish my degree. We both did engineering. I didn't want to be an engineer. So I had a mate who was a promoter who'd promoted a night at the sub club that I DJ'd at. And he said, "Oh, I've done this course at Glasgow Uni where they teach you a bit of marketing and show you how to like do some business stuff." He had a similar degree. Had an engineering degree and he's like, "I didn't want to do it." So this gave him a bit of marketing experience. So I was like, cool, I'll do this course. And then halfway through the course, you were either meant to get a placement or you were to set up your own business. For some reason, they couldn't find me a placement. So they were like, "Have you got a business that you could do?" And I was like, "Well, I've just made these 4 tracks. I could set up a record label." And they were like, "Okay, well, we've taught you how to do a business plan. Why go and do the research, come back on Monday with a business plan, and then we'll figure out whether you could do this record label." So did it, came back, and they're like, "Yeah, this is great. You'll be able to get some money. I reckon you'll get some money from the Prince's Trust. You need 2 grand, you say. So I reckon you'll get that from the Prince's Trust. And if you get 1 grand from the Prince's Trust, then the bank will give you a loan of 1,000, and then you can put that into your cash flow and you'll have enough money to get started." I was like, okay. So I went to the Prince's Trust, got the money. So okay, cool. Well, I guess I'm starting a record label then. So I just started a record label and really stupidly just pressed up 2012 inches because that was the number that I'd put in my business plan. Obviously, I could have pressed up 500 and seen whether the 500 sold and then repressed it, but like I was just really green and not like. But luckily, I sold pretty much all of them at 1,800 or something like that. I think they all went in the end. So then when I'd done that, I'd turned like the 2 grand into 3,600. So you just go again, and then you go again, and then and then you're like, "Oh, so this works now," and then you get confidence and you just keep going. And I was DJing in working as a music journalist to kind of pay my rent at the time, just to pay what I needed to do, and I was just letting the money build up in the record company account, just to like so that we had bigger stuff to do. And that was it. I did that for a couple of years, and then the distributor, we'd done 7 different 12 inches. We did a 12 for Junior Boys Own, and I'd got loads of press. People had written about us. They'd like talked about the new British house movement. There was loads going on. It's really cool. I was still DJing, and then my distributor was like, this record label you've got, and so there was only the two of us making the music. So to make it look like a record label, I kept changing the artist names. So we had all these stupid artist names that we'd come up with and different ones to make it look like there was different artists on a label. And the distributor was like, look, no one thinks, you're not kidding anyone here. Everyone knows it's just the two of you. And unless you get some new artists for your record label, then you're not going anywhere, and we're probably not going to continue to distribute you. And I was like, okay. Okay, right. So then I just was like, right, well, I've got loads of mates that make house music because I've met loads of people and from being a journalist. So I just was like, look, I've got to start a label. I've got to get more artists. Will you come and will you do a record for me? And they're like, nah, your label's got too much of its own sound. I don't want to do anything like that. I was like, right, okay, wow, really stumped. I was like, okay, cool. So if I come up with a new label, will you do something for that? Like, aye, that'd be fine. So I had the idea to do a label called Glasgow Underground because all the people, there was most of the people I knew were in Glasgow. So like DJ Q and Harry from the Sub Club and people like that. So I was like, right, cool. So I'm going to set up a new label. I'm going to do stuff for it, but I'm also going to sign stuff from other people. And I made sure went back to the distributor. Here's the plan. I've got these people. There's guys in New York that I'd met, Mateo and Matos, and they were frustrated with the US labels because they weren't able to do the kind of stuff that they wanted, but the stuff that they were making was really popular in Glasgow. So I was like, great, bring it here. Give me all your stuff all the stuff you can't get signed in New York, send it over here. I'll sign it. And did really fair deals with them, 50-50 deals. They made a load of money. They put out a couple of albums with me. I think each year I paid them like 25 grand. They were like over the moon. And yeah, that was it. The label just went from there. And after we started doing albums, that's where the money was. So once we started putting it on CD and selling compilations in trendy stores and people writing about us in magazines, it just took off. So the label it was like, then I had staff and it all went from there.
Oh, you can stop doing, the anonymous recording artist. Well, you co-produce Milo.
Yes.
Obviously a massive, massive hit, Dr. Pressure.
Yeah.
What happened with Milo? Because I know you put the album out, was it
2004?
2004, and then he kind of dropped off the map for a while.
So we signed him in 2002. This is after, so piracy started to hit the music business around about the turn of the millennium. Also, house music started to wane in popularity. So people were more interested in different kind of things. Mashup started to become popular, like house, deep house. That stuff just kind of fell off the map. We call it the Great Deep House Depression of 2001. And 2002, I knew I wanted to make a change, so I was looking for something a bit different. I wanted to do something not pop, but I just was just fed up of doing underground music that just connected to a very small audience. I was like, I think I've got some good experience. I've got good A&R experience. Like, I want to try and do something a bit bigger. And then Milo's demos came into Glasgow Underground, and they kept coming in. So he would do like 5 or 6 demos a week. He was incredibly prolific. And there was a club promoter in Glasgow who was trying to make records, and I'd helped him out make some records. He'd done a couple on Glasgow Underground. He heard it as well. He's like, "Oh, I love this guy. We should do something together with him." So we set up a new label because again, if we'd released it on Glasgow Underground, we'd done loads of albums in Glasgow Underground. I'd done like 38 albums or something by this point, and had some good successes, but all in the kind of sub 10,000 album sales market. And I just felt if we tried to bring an artist like Milo into that sort of home, people would have a ceiling for him. They would imagine him just as a kind of another one of our artists. I think maybe Romanthony was a bit different. We maybe did 25,000 albums worldwide with Romanthony, so he was a bigger thing, but we hadn't really taken it beyond that. And also with the climate, just felt it needed something different. So we set up a new label for him, and then started releasing his records from kind of 2003 onwards. Started with a 7-inch of Destroy Rock and Roll, and then built it and built it. And the plan was to put the album out and then come back with like save the big singles, Drop the Pressure, and In My Arms till after the album had come out in 2004. And it just kept snowballing. We got such great press, and the everything just kept building and building, and all the money we invested it back in. I hadn't really been that big on music marketing. A lot when you're kind of running a label and you're sort of trading on reviews and being cool, you don't need to do that much advertising in order to get shops to buy your stuff because the magazines are writing about you. So you don't need. And the other guy, Duncan, who was involved in the label, came from a club promoting background. So he was like, "We're just going to do posters. We're going to be like, we have to be everywhere. We have to tell people we've got album of the month in Jockey Slot. We've got album of the month in the Observer Music Monthly. We have to shout about this." And so we did. We put all the first sales of 12 inches and whatever and licenses we got in to license it around the world. Just put it all into marketing and really pushed it. And then the first single we dropped after the album came out, Drop the Pressure, went into the charts at number 16, just on us, the work we've done. We had some cool remixes. Errol Alkin did a mix for us, some other cool people, and yeah, it was amazing. The second 12-inch we did went into the charts again at number 14. And at that point, we then had all the major labels trying to like get us to work with them. We signed, and the album just kept on going. I think we were talking to the majors from the end of that year, 2004, to the beginning of 2005, but we couldn't sign a deal with them because we hadn't been able to release In My Arms yet because it had 2 samples in it, and we didn't have the samples cleared. And we were really stuck. We got to 70,000 albums. I think we were almost ready to be like done. And while I'd been running Glasgow Underground, Jim Kerr from Simple Minds had reached out to me. He'd bought some of my albums in the Hideout in West London and was really was a big fan. So I'd had lunch with him a couple of times, and he'd introduced me to a guy that used to play in the Silencers, Martin Hanlon, and then Jed Malone, who is Claire Grogan's cousin. He used to tour manage the Silencers, and he'd worked with Simple Minds. They helped me out on a couple of things, helped me get a publishing deal for the label. And I was talking to him about this situation, and he was like, "Oh, you know what? They're both with Warner Chappell, and is a Scottish guy that runs Warner Chappell in America. Let me phone him." So he phoned this guy who was running Warner Chappell in LA, and he told him all about it. He was like trying to explain to him what a mashup was, because problem both writers, the people that wrote Kim Carnes, Betty Davis Eyes, and the people that wrote Boy Meets Girl, Waiting for a Star to Fall, both wanted 100%. They both clear it, but they both want 100%. You can't give them 200% of a copyright. So he got talking, and the guy who's working in Warner Chappell was like, "So it's kind of like a medley, like Jive Bunny. You've basically got Scottish Jive Bunny." And Martin's like, "Yeah, I suppose it is like Scottish Jive Bunny, yeah." So he's like, if you tell them that that's what it is, if you tell those writers that it's a medley, they'll get it, because everyone did Stars on 45s and nobody had a problem with sharing the publishing. So we're like, right, brilliant, let's do that. And so we went back to the writers, said to like these writers that have written like, I Want to Know What Love Is. Not that one, sorry. They've written some, absolutely, Meryl and Rubicam's written some absolutely ginormous songs. They're like, "Okay, this Scottish kid's got a medley. Will you split it 50-50 with the other ones?" They're like, "Yeah, no problem." So we had the publishing cleared. So then we went back. I was just the day that that happened, I was like, oh, right, this might actually work now. So we went back, did a deal with Sony, and then at the same, just as that was happening, we were looking for another single to put out. So we put it in my arms. That went really well. And then these two guys from Brighton, Phil and Dog, had done a bootleg of Drop the Pressure and Doctor Beat. And the chords are really similar, you know, the dun, 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 dun. It's really similar to like the bass lines from Drop the Pressure. And we always like, we used to wind miles off about it. But like, you just nicked it from there, and somebody's just spotted the fact that you've nicked it from there. But he denied it. But I was like, okay, well, maybe in the back of his head somewhere it was there. So the and luckily we'd done a publishing deal with Universal, who published Miami Sound Machine. It was written by Gloria Estefan and her dad, and they wrote the song. And the master was with Sony, so like the original, and we'd done a joint venture with Sony. So both things just like it was magic. It was like we just were like, oh, that's really lucky. We did both those deals with the right people, and so we could put, and Milo got half of the songwriting on the new song, and we got an incredible deal. We got to do the sample. We didn't have to pay them a big fee for it. We put it out as like Milo versus Miami Sound Machine, put it out like a bootleg, and went to number 3 in the charts. And then that's it. We got TV advertising, records like exploded. We get to 300,000. We have a proper hit. That's what makes all the money for the record label. Sony are happy. Everyone's like, saved the day. Like, so yeah, Scottish guy saved the day.
I also want to, running a label has got to be hard. It's not like back in the day where, you take 1,000 records and you go to
Mm.
individual record shops. Obviously this is online, and like you talked about earlier, piracy, and people paying for music. A lot of people will try their best not to pay for music. So,
Yeah, yeah.
what at the start of the year, do you already set goals for the whole year for the label?
I mean, it's very difficult to set goals, but like the thing now is with, at least with Spotify, people are paying a monthly subscription. And so the money does come, like the streams that happen every month, and also the way people listen to music, you don't buy a CD and then you've paid for that CD so you can listen to it as many times as you want. The artist doesn't get paid. If you're streaming my song and there's like 3 million, there's 3 million, I do 3 million streams a month. And so like that pays, that just keeps, the money just keeps paying every month. So there's a kind of, you can sort of say, right, well, we need to generate, because everything's got a curve. So we need to generate new songs that will sort of do that so that we can keep, so that, we've got like a monthly revenue, we've got a salary bill, we run like the companies run soundly. So at the moment, we, we don't overspend. We're not trying to, we don't have a huge amount of staff. We don't have super fancy offices. We can survive without big hits. We're always trying to make bigger hits. So last year we had a viral record that's ended up doing 200 million streams. So that's great when that comes in, but then that's just money in the bank, and then means that if we don't have one next year, we're not like, everyone's like worried about their jobs or that kind of thing. So it has meant, it's if you can operate within the new system, I think it's easier to make money doing underground dance music now than it was. We turn over more money now. We turned over more money last year than we ever did with Milo when we had 5 top 40 hits. And now we're doing more revenue than that because of how the models, how things have changed. And so people can complain about Spotify, but I can go, well, I mean, I had to have 5 top 40 hits and a platinum album, and I still aren't doing as well as I'm doing now. And so, like, how can you tell me it's not as good as it? How can you tell me it's worse than it was? I just can't see it. But I mean, I know people are unhappy with the amount per stream that Spotify pay, and they should be paying more. And obviously, no one's going to turn down more money if people are offering it to them. But that's, from my point of view, that's how I see it.
Well, and now, we live in a social media world where you have to create a brand to as a DJ or as a label? Was it hard for you to actually like go from like let's say normal practices to the social media aspect?
I mean, it's changed over the last. It's now completely. It feels like traditional marketing is pretty much dead for music. So you don't spend money on press or rate if depending on the artist. So if you're Barry Can't Swim, then yeah, sure, you want to have a radio campaign. You want to make sure that your next record's taken to Radio One. But if you're like a new artist, you probably don't spend money on radio and you focus, if you're a new artist, that's where you can get growth and exponential growth by having a viral TikTok. And so I generally say to new artists, like, create on there, try and get it to work, try and, make stuff that people want to watch, build an audience, um, and do that. We're lucky we've got like some big playlists that we've built over the years. We've got ways of driving traffic. I've got you know, nearly 50,000 followers on Spotify. So whenever I put music out, I have an amount of listeners that listen to that week one, and that's great. I've built that over the years, and I say to new artists, you have to build that, and it can take you 5 years, 10 years. Just get started and start building, because if you're sitting here looking at it going, well, I might not want to be in music in 5 years or 10 years, then this isn't the game for you. Then you've got to be like, yeah, I want to be here. I don't mind working two jobs. I want to be there, and if it takes me 10 years of working two jobs and I finally get to give up my day job, I'm in. I'm in. That's the kind of people you need as like, and it's kind of hard as a label, but that's pretty much how I see it.
Well, it's like James Hype, for example. I don't like his music. It's not for me,
Mm.
but I appreciate the graft that he puts in. And he's
Yeah,
on social
yeah.
media. He does his YouTube channel, and he's working and working and working. So I mean, hats off to anybody that puts in that time.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes, the younger generation, they'll watch the James Hypes of this world and go, I want to be just like that. I want to have a private jet. But they
Yeah.
don't understand that, like, James is actually also paying for that private jet, out
Yeah.
like, what he earns. And I just think, it's not champagne caviar like a lot of these young kids think. I mean, I'm sure yourself as well as me, I got into this music scene because it just took me,
Mm.
that's soul, and that's what I love. I love emotional records. I love things that move me, and that's why I fell in love with it, and that's why I still fall in love with it. I don't listen to dance music every single day because that would probably just drive me absolutely mental. You've got to have a little bit of this and that in between. But what's your thoughts on, like, you've got these vinyl purists, and then you've got the
Mm.
digital crowd, and I've noticed more and more on Facebook or Twitter, these arguments, vinyl back in the day, this. What's your thoughts? Because you're still out there, you're still DJing, and the connection with the crowd. Obviously, there's a lot more phones now than there was back then. And it just seems like, sometimes when I turn on YouTube to watch a DJ live, they've got so many cameras shoved in their face. And for me, that loses the soul of the moment. But I understand it's just the way people are today. What's your whole, like?
Yeah, to be honest, a lot of the parties I play are kind of LGBTQ parties. That's the audience who really love the people that run those clubs are the promoters that love to book me. The people that come to those clubs are the people who really love what I do and I don't play. I can't remember the last time I played a straight club in London. So like it's been a while. It's not like I can't remember. It's probably like 2 or 3 years ago, but it's just that's the audience I play. And to be honest, there's not an awful lot of phones out at those places. I do see it, but um I don't experience it. I experience people that are there. It's a different kind of different crowd. So I experience people that are coming for the dance floor, and I guess I'm not like, people know my music and people know who I am, but I'm not like a super famous. I'm not a DJ who's famous on, and I'm not Fisher or Michael Beebe or any of these people. So I don't know. I don't. It doesn't really cross my world, and I quite like that it doesn't. So I'm kind of happy about that. And as to the sort of vinyl digital thing, um, I've been there at the changeover from vinyl to CD, and it was the difference. People talk about the difference in sound, and the only difference that I can really see is that you have to master things differently for vinyl purely because of the physical limitations of the format, the loudness that you can get onto how loud a record is. Sort of, if you know anything about loops, about sort of sonic, how compression and how loud a record is in terms of its measurement, RMS power measurement of the record. There's only so much loudness you can get onto vinyl grooves, whereas you can make digital files much louder. And I think that maybe that's what people miss about vinyl, is that they don't, that kind of, the loudness that music is at now can be a bit tiring to listen to. And it was, certainly with albums, even though you could have records that were really loud. So if you had a 12-inch pressing of One More Time, it's going to sound much louder than a long player of like Stevie Wonder's Fulfilling This First Finale, which is going to have a whole load of dynamic range in it. You're going to have some songs that are like, got not so many beats, and some songs that are more like much more groove based, and they're going to be louder. And that's all it is. I've never been able to distinguish what makes the format sound different from the mastering. And apart from putting the sound of putting a needle on and the sound of vinyl noise, but which you can replicate. So if you've replicated that in a digital format, I'd love to see these vinyl purists A/B test. Even with something like a 320 MP3 of a recording of someone putting vinyl onto record, and you go, right, is that vinyl or digital? And you go, oh, it's vinyl. And you go, no, it's not, it's digital. Because I can't see how you can tell the difference. Is this, I feel the same with a lot of synthesizer chat. And at the end of, for me, I'm just like, if it sounds good to me, it's good. That's it. Don't care what the format is. I find DJing on digital much easier, and it's much easier for me to create a sort of harmonically happy blend of music in a digital way with a master tempo where the pitch stays the same when I move the tempo up and down, and I can work out, I know the key of all my records, and I've got all the tools that I've now got on modern digital decks. I think that's, final DJing was fun, but this is much, you can build, the sets can be so much tighter, and, you can never lose the groove. You can, stuff that happened with vinyl where you just like, oh, I've messed the mix up and I've got to cut it across, or I've brought a track in and I've just, it's just clashing, but I've not got time to pick another record. I'm just going to have a very quick blend because this is going to sound a bit like, you don't have that with digital now. It's like I know this is going to blend well. Both of these records are in key or they're in a close key. I can, all that stuff. So it's much, I'm generally happier now, like with a digital, with two, Pioneer CDJ 3000s and a decent mixer. Very happy.
Well, I think that the biggest thing that I really miss is actually going to a record store and getting the physical vinyl, because there is nothing like the smell of brand new vinyl. Take ripping it out, and then smell it
Uh,
a little bit.
Sliding it across your knee to break
Yeah,
the cellophane.
and the artwork as well.
Yeah,
Back
no,
in the
no,
day,
there is definitely some
that's
stuff
the
to
whole
miss.
bit. Yeah,
Yeah,
just reading every word that was on the, you
yeah,
know, especially if you get an album, but because for me, like going on Beatport and spending an hour, 2 hours looking for that one track, it's just a little bit soulless because you're just staring at a computer screen. While back in
yeah,
the you actually go to a record shop and you meet your mates, you get a rapport, with the seller.
yeah.
Um, and I've still got mates that, sold me my first record and I still talk to them. So I do kind of miss that, but in a digital world, it's a lot easier now for bedroom producers to put out tracks, which I find
Yeah,
very good. But if you go through, I mean, I was talking to like Paul Oakenfold a couple months ago, and he's like, there's thousands upon thousands of tracks coming out every single day. But the
yeah.
problem is a lot of them are low quality because they don't know how to engineer, and a good engineer will make that track turn into gold dust, and
Yeah,
that's what these bedroom producers are missing.
yeah, I think, yeah, it's definitely democratized the creation of music and also the availability, like your ability to make music available. So there's a lot of noise, there's a lot more noise. I think something like 50% of tracks released onto Spotify or the streaming platforms only get one play. So it's like there's just a huge amount of, not sure who's calling me from the States, turn that off. Um, yeah, so there's a huge amount of noise out there, and I don't know whether that'll fade, whether people will get bored of that, or whether that'll always be there. People will want to have listen. Look, I've put my record out. You can listen to it on Spotify, and you go back a year later, and it's had like it still hasn't reached the kind of minimum requirement. I think Spot doing that thing where you only get paid if it gets to 1,000 streams. It kind of I don't know if it'll stop people. I think a lot of people just want to have like put a tune out. They want to sort of, but whether they'll continue to do that if it's not like if it doesn't make money for them, I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't think it's this. I there's definitely some things that I miss about the old way of doing things, but I think generally we're in a better place as a music creator, as a label. There's no gatekeeping. TikTok doesn't gatekeep. The algorithm may be gatekeeping, but it's actually trying to find stuff that people want to watch. So if you create something engaging, that's the only barrier to entry. Create an engaging TikTok that with your music on it, and you know, we had someone sample one of our tracks, and they had three different TikToks, all done like 1 million views. We put it up online, and within a month, it's done 250,000 streams. It'll probably do, 5 million streams by the end of the year. That's 15 grand worth of revenue. It's doable. It's kind of you just have to like work it and tweak it and get it to work and make sure that if you do have something blow up that you can put it out. It's not a big sample. You're not going to get like, just and it's there, so people can just, people can do it.
But I just believe, don't get in it for the money. Get in it because you
Yeah,
love to make this music, and that's one of the biggest things I can tell people. Like you can really tell the people that have put their heart and soul into the music, 100%. Before we end, I want you to talk about your podcast as well, though.
okay.
I mean, I appreciate obviously you coming on, but I also want you to kind of tell, the listeners about your podcast.
Yeah, well, it's just brand new. I've recorded our first two guests. So the first guest was Saran Tardelli Reid, who runs a company called Sample Clearance Services. She's cleared samples for everyone from Fatboy Slim to Daft Punk, and we delve into sample clearance and the legal issues around running a record label and being a dance artist. And the second episode is with Tom Curry, who works for Your Army, one of the biggest promo companies, and he's like an expert in DJ promotion. He's been sending records to DJs for the last like 10 years and has, everyone in his phone book from Kind of Music to David Guetta. And it just like how you sort of navigate that world as an artist and a record label. So really, and there's going to be more guests in that vein. It's a podcast for people who might want to be signed to Glasgow Underground, DJs who might play our records and who are interested in being part of the industry. Just giving them a bit of an overview of like this is what the industry's like. These are the people who are really good at what they do, and this is the stuff that you need to know. And yeah, so we've just started it. Hopefully, people will watch it, listen to it, and we'll do more. I don't know. We're just trying to figure out what to do as a record label on social media because it's very hard to exist as a brand on social media. So just trying to think what would, if I was following a label and I was into dance music, I'd be following a label because I wanted to get signed, or I'm into their tunes. Like, what else would we find interesting? So just coming up with some stuff like that.
Yeah, well, I definitely, I love that side of it though as well. You know, not just talking to other DJs and musicians. You go a bit deeper, you know, to
Yeah,
find what's going on in the music world. Before I go, I know you love your music. I know you love your football, but you love your lager.
yeah.
Well, what's your favorite? What's your favorite lager?
Um, yeah, I've got two. So I really love, yeah, Kennet's Lager's probably my favorite session lager, 4%. The ideal, like you can have five, six in a session and you're not going to have a terribly sore head the next day. But if I'm feeling like I'm gonna have a couple of really nice pints and I'm not gonna be on the session, then I do like a draft Peroni. So they are my two, Italian and Scottish.
Good combination there. Yeah.
Good combination. Yeah, I've got yeah.
Yeah, well, as you know, when we get older, you know, the next day are really, really rough, or the next week. You know,
Hmm.
I can only have a few pints and then like yeah, I don't want to do anything for a few days after. But yeah, I stick.
Yeah, the numbers getting low now. It's sort of like it's under five now for sure. It's like a happy number, and it's shrinking sadly. But there you go. It's just that's what happens.
Upcoming releases for the label.
I mean, I do loads. So I pretty much do a record a week at the moment. We're just experimenting with something different. I do a lot of production and for artists on the label. So, and I just decided to just see what would happen if I, instead of doing production for other artists on the label, just was more creative with just did what I wanted to do. So we've been trying that this year, and that seems to be going quite well. So I've got actually got two albums dropping this summer. One of just my favorite covers that I've done, and one of all the sort of more original stuff. Just I put out a lot of music out there, and it's nice to just every now and again package it up and go, and then run some ads and send people to it and go. You might have heard me or you might have seen one of my tracks, but if you want to like listen to all the songs that you'll know the songs, here's this album and it's kind of dance covers. And if you want some new music, if you're into that, rather than you don't want to hear like songs that you've heard before, if you want to hear the stuff that I've actually made, come up with from scratch, then here's a bunch of original stuff. So that's coming in that's coming next month.
Oh, nice one. Well, everyone, if you want to check out Kevin's label, go to glasgowunderground.com and your YouTube channel. Is that under your name?
There's one for each. So Kevin McKay Music on YouTube was got my releases and DJ sets and stuff from me, and then the label one has got the radio shows that we do. I do a radio show once a week, just me talking, presenting music, and all the label releases and playlists. You can listen to all of our playlists there for free, or it's ad supported. Or if you've got YouTube Premium, then you can listen to it there. Same ones that are on Spotify, Apple Music, Tidal, all the big streaming services have got our playlist, so you can check them all out there. There's links in the YouTube and on our website.
Well, mate, it's been an absolute pleasure. Like I always
Thanks,
say,
been
an hour goes by so quickly when you're talking about things that you really enjoy.
absolutely, and football and music are my two things. So yeah, it was lovely to
Yeah,
talk to you.
you too, mate. Thanks everyone for listening. Please like, subscribe, put your notifications on, and as I always say, check out new music, but go back and check out older music that an artist you've never heard of before or a label you've never heard before. Go check them out. And in this crazy world that we live in at the moment, please take care of one another and stay safe. And we'll see you next time.
All right.